A perfect Sunday in the Cotswolds is shattered in seconds. When 20-year-old Emily prioritizes a TikTok dance over her mother's hard work, she learns that in this family, accidents have consequences, and sometimes the only way to fix a careless mind is through a stinging lesson. The sun hung high over the green hills of the Cotswolds, a brilliant, unblinking eye that cast a golden glow over the landscape. It was one of those rare English Sundays in late spring when the weather gods decided to be benevolent. The sky stayed clear, a vast dome of azure blue uninterrupted by gray. The air was warm but devoid of the sticky humidity that usually plagued July. The birds, thrushes, blackbirds, and the occasional lark sang with a fervor that suggested they too knew the value of a perfect weekend. Below, the sleepy stone cottages of the village sat nestled among neatly trimmed hedges and blooming wisteria, their limestone walls glowing honey-gold in the light. It was a scene from a postcard, a slice of rural perfection that seemed almost too good to be true. Eliza Carter had planned this picnic for days. For Eliza, planning was not merely a logistical exercise. It was a love language. She was a woman of 52 who believed that care was demonstrated through effort. She didn't just buy food, she curated it. This outing wasn't just a family trip to eat sandwiches on the grass. It was a quiet reunion with her younger sister, Clara, who had recently returned from a 2-year teaching stint in Edinburgh. Everything had been prepared with a surgeon's precision and an artist's eye. Eliza had woken at 5 a.m., long before the rest of the house stirred. The kitchen was her sanctuary in those early hours. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic chopping of cucumber and the soft hiss of the kettle. She had baked scones from scratch, her grandmother's recipe, requiring cold butter and a light hand, and wrapped them in linen to keep them warm. She had sliced the crusts off the bread with a sharp knife, measuring the angles to ensure perfect triangles. There was a jar of clotted cream she had driven 20 miles to the specific farm shop in Dalesford to procure because the supermarket version simply wouldn't do. There were strawberries, washed and hulled. There was a bottle of crisp, dry rose chilling in the cooler, nestled alongside homemade lemonade for her daughter. That daughter, Emily, was currently leaning against the sturdy trunk of an ancient oak tree, scrolling through her phone. Emily was 20 years old. She was bright-eyed, full of restless energy, and possessed a beauty that was as effortless as it was chaotic. She was dressed exactly as her mother had requested for the occasion, a knee-length dark blue cotton frock with short puff sleeves, a modest square neckline, and a white Peter Pan collar that gave her a sweet, almost vintage charm. That it was a simple dress, chosen by Eliza for its comfort and neatness, a nod to the traditional aesthetic of the day. But on Emily, it somehow looked both innocent and mischievous. The hem swished around her knees as she shifted her weight. Her bare feet were already out of her sandals, toes digging into the lush grass. "Is Aunt Clara here yet?" Emily asked, not looking up from her screen. "She's parking the car, darling," Eliza said, smoothing the corners of the large tartan blanket she had just spread out. "Put the phone away, please. We're here to be together." "I'm just checking something," Emily murmured, tapping a rapid-fire rhythm with her thumbs. Eliza sighed, a soft sound lost in the breeze. She walked over to the cooler, a heavy, vintage metal one painted a cheerful red, and adjusted its position near the tree roots to keep it in the shade. "Emily," Eliza said, her voice firm but gentle. "The phone." Emily finally looked up. She flashed a smile that usually got her out of trouble. Okay. Just let me finish this post." Aunt Clara appeared over the rise of the hill, carrying a tote bag and looking every bit the returning traveler in her sensible walking shoes and oversized sunglasses. "Eliza," Clara called out, waving. "Clara!" Eliza's face lit up. She abandoned the cooler and walked to meet her sister. They embraced in the middle of the field, a hug that carried the weight of 2 years of missed birthdays and Zoom calls. "You look wonderful," Clara said, pulling back to inspect her older sister. "And look at the spread. You haven't changed a bit. Still the hostess with the mostest." "It's just a light lunch," Eliza demurred, though she was pleased. They walked back to the oak tree. Emily offered a cheerful wave from her spot against the bark. "Hi, Aunt Clara. Welcome back." "Hello, sweetie," Clara beamed. "Look at you. So grown up. I love the dress. Very chic." "Mom picked it." Emily shrugged, but she did a little curtsy, playing into the role. They settled onto the blanket. The location was perfect. The view stretched for miles across the valley. The shade of the oak tree was cool and dappled. Eliza began to unpack. She laid out the linen napkins, folding them into sharp triangles. She set out the plates, melamine, but high quality, patterned with wildflowers. "I brought shortbread," Clara said, pulling a tin from her bag. "From a little bakery on the Royal Mile." "Oh, lovely," Eliza said. "We can have that with the strawberries." Emily was watching them, but her attention was drifting. The silence of the countryside, while peaceful to Eliza and Clara, was understimulating to a 20-year-old fueled by TikTok algorithms and pop music. She noticed the small Bluetooth speaker Eliza had brought, mostly for quiet classical music later, sitting on top of the heavy red cooler. Without asking, Emily reached over. She tapped her phone. Suddenly, the serene atmosphere was punctured by the thumping bass of an upbeat pop song. It was catchy, infectious, and completely incongruous with the setting. "Oh, Eliza sighed, pausing with a plate of sandwiches in her hand. "Not now, love. We're about to eat. Let's have some quiet first." "Just one song, Mom." Emily laughed. "It's a vibe. Look at this view. It needs a soundtrack." She stood up. She couldn't help herself. The rhythm was in her blood. She started to sway, her hips moving in time with the beat. Her bare feet brushed the grass. She twirled in place, arms outstretched, her dark blue frock flaring out like a bell with each spin. "Come on, Aunt Clara!" Emily called out, laughing, a light, tinkling sound that usually brought joy to the room. "Just one dance. It's too nice a day not to." Clara chuckled, taking a sip of water. "Let her be, Eliza. It's sweet. She's happy." But Eliza watched with growing unease that it wasn't the dancing that bothered her. It was the lack of spatial awareness. It was the way Emily moved through the world as if she were the only object in it, assuming that everything else would simply move out of her way. The cooler stood just behind Emily. It was tall. It was heavy, and it was full to the brim with ice, glass bottles, and open containers. "Emily," Eliza warned, her voice sharpening. "Mind the cooler." "I'm fine, Mom." Emily yelled over the music. She spun again, faster this time, eyes closed, lost in the moment. "Emily, stop," Eliza said, standing up, but it was too late. Mid-twirl, Emily's heel caught on an exposed tree root that snaked through the grass. Her balance failed. She stumbled backward with a surprised yelp, her arms windmilling for purchase that wasn't there. She crashed right into the red cooler. Didn't just slide. It tipped with a sickening, heavy thud. The cooler went over. The latch, not fully secured, flew open. Disaster unfolded in slow motion. Ice cubes scattered across the tartan blanket like shattered diamonds. The bottle of homemade lemonade, the cap loosened for serving, burst open upon impact. Sticky, sugary yellow liquid sprayed everywhere. The carefully cut cucumber sandwiches tumbled out of their container, landing face down in puddles of melting ice and lemonade. The bowl of fruit salad capsized, sending strawberries and melon rolling into the grass, instantly coating them in dirt and ants. And the scones, the beautiful, warm scones wrapped in parchment, they rolled out, soaking up the spilled juice like sponges. The music played on for 3 seconds, thump, 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 before Emily scrambled to grab her phone and kill the silence. Silence fell over the hill. It was absolute. The birds seemed to stop singing. The wind held its breath. Emily straightened slowly. She brushed a lock of hair from her face. Her cheeks were flushed pink, not from exertion, but from the dawning horror of what she had done. Her dark blue dress was smudged with green grass, stains at the hem where she had knelt to catch herself. She looked around wide-eyed. "Oh," Emily whispered. "Oops." Eliza didn't move for a long moment. She stared at the wreckage. She looked at the sandwiches turning into mush. She looked at the jar of clotted cream, shattered against a rock, white luxury seeping into the dirt. She looked at the jam tarts Clara had brought, now ruined. This wasn't just a spill. This was the destruction of intent. It was the physical manifestation of Emily's carelessness. "Oops," Eliza repeated quietly. Emily gave a nervous laugh, rubbing her arm. It's fine. We can get more food. There's that nice cafe in Beaufort, right? Or I'll make sandwiches when we get home. It's not a big deal." That was the spark. Eliza finally stood fully upright. She brushed a crumb from her skirt. Her expression wasn't angry in the shouting, red-faced sense. It was worse. It was cold. It was disappointed. And in the Carter household, disappointment was a terrifying weapon. "Emily Rose Carter," Eliza said. Her voice was low, steady, and carried across the quiet hilltop like a bell tolling. Emily flinched. The use of the middle name was never good. "This isn't about food," Eliza said, stepping over a puddle of lemonade to stand in front of her daughter. "It is about respect." Emily's smile faded completely. She looked at her feet. "I said I'm sorry." "You said oops," Eliza corrected. "You knew I spent all morning packing this. You saw me up at 5 a.m. You saw the care. And yet, you chose to prioritize your own entertainment. You chose to dance, to show off, right next to the one thing that could ruin everything." Eliza gestured to the mess. "This isn't the first time, is it? Last week, you left the back door open during that downpour because you wanted to hear the rain, and the parquet floor warped. Before that, you knocked over Grandma's urn vase while practicing a tick-tock dance in the hallway." Eliza took a step closer. Emily shrank back, looking small despite her height. "You don't think, Emily," Eliza said. "You just act. You move through the world expecting others to clean up your wake." "I didn't mean to," Emily protested, her voice rising in a whine. "It was an accident." "Impact outweighs intent," Eliza said sharply. She raised a hand to stop the protest. "No more words." Eliza pointed to the blanket. Specifically, to a dry patch of the tartan plaid that had escaped the lemonade flood. "You will lie down," Eliza commanded. "Right here, on this blanket, beside the mess you made." Emily blinked. She looked at her mother, then at Aunt Clara. Clara shifted uncomfortably on her cushion, looking away, pretending to examine a cloud. Clara knew Eliza's ways. Firm, traditional, unyielding when pushed. She would not intervene. "Mom," Emily whispered, horrified. "You can't be serious. We're outside. People might see." "There is no one for miles," Eliza said, scanning the empty hills. "And even if there were, I do not care. You behaved like a thoughtless child, destroying the family meal for a moment of vanity. You will accept the consequence of a child." "I'm 20," Emily hissed. "Then act like it," Eliza snapped, her voice cracking the whip. A 20-year-old would have checked her surroundings. A 20-year-old would have respected the effort of others. "You did neither." Eliza pointed again. "Down. Now. Or we go home, I take your phone, I take your car keys, and you spend the next month scrubbing the house from top to bottom. Your choice." The threat was real. Emily knew it. Eliza didn't bluff. Emily's lower lip trembled. She felt the hot prickle of tears. This was humiliating. This was archaic. But as she looked at the ruined food, the labor of love destroyed by her clumsiness, she felt a heavy stone of guilt in her stomach. She looked at her mother's unwavering gaze. Slowly, reluctantly, Emily dropped to her knees. She crawled onto the dry section of a tartan blanket. "Face down," Eliza instructed. "Hands under your chin." Emily lowered herself. The grass beneath the blanket was lumpy. The smell of spilled lemonade was overpowering, sickly sweet and sticky. She lay flat, her dark blue cotton frock bunching around her hips. She rested her chin on her crossed arms, staring at a crushed strawberry inches from her face. The sun felt suddenly too bright, a spotlight on her shame. Eliza knelt beside her. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked focused, like a gardener pruning a wayward branch to save the tree. "This isn't about shame for shame's sake," Eliza said softly, leaning down so only Emily could hear. "It is about learning. It is about understanding that actions have weight. You need to feel the weight, Emily, because words clearly aren't working." Eliza placed a gentle but firm hand on the small of Emily's back. It was a grounding touch, anchoring her to the earth. Then, with deliberate care, Eliza reached for the hem of the dark blue cotton frock. "Mom!" Emily whimpered into her arms. "Quiet," Eliza said. She lifted the skirt. She folded it up, smoothing the fabric so it rested on Emily's lower back. Underneath, Emily wore simple white cotton briefs. Modest. Practical. The kind her mother bought for her. They offered no protection. They were stark white against her pale skin, a target in the sunlight. Emily tensed, her glutes clenching. Her breath caught in her throat. She waited. Eliza didn't rush. She looked at the position. She looked at the vulnerability. This was necessary. She raised her hand. Thwack! The first spank landed with a soft, dull sound against the cotton. It wasn't brutal, but it was unquestionably firm. It was a flat-handed swat that covered the entire curve of the right cheek. Ah! Emily gasped, her legs kicking out involuntarily. Stay still, Eliza said calmly. Thwack! The second one landed on the left. Oh God! Emily moaned. The sting was immediate. It was a warm, spreading heat that bloomed under the cotton. Thwack! 3. Eliza established a rhythm. It wasn't angry. It was methodical. Strike. Pause. Strike. Pause. This is for the picnic, Eliza said. Thwack. Ow. Mom. This is for the wasted food, Eliza continued. Thwack. Please. This is for Aunt Clara, who traveled 400 miles to see you, only to have you ignore her for a phone screen. Thwack. That one hit home, both physically and emotionally. Emily sobbed, burying her face deeper into the blanket. The guilt was mixing with the pain now, creating a cocktail of misery. I'm sorry, Emily cried. I'm sorry, Aunt Clara. Clara didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. She watched sadly. She knew this lesson was hard, but she also knew Emily needed gravity. She needed to be pulled back down to earth. Thwack! 7. Emily's hips squirmed. She tried to wiggle away, but Eliza's hand on her back was an iron bar. Take it, Eliza ordered. Don't run from it. Feel it. Thwack! 8. The tears were flowing freely now, soaking the tartan fabric. Emily's pride was gone. The cool girl dancing in the field was gone. There was only the daughter being corrected. Why are you hurting me? Emily whimpered between sobs. I am teaching you, Eliza corrected gently. You chose this moment, Emily. Not me. You made the mess. Now you are cleaning up the emotional debt. Thwack! 9. It burns, Emily wailed. Good, Eliza said. Let it burn. Maybe the heat will burn the selfishness out. Thwack! 10. Eliza paused. She looked at the skin reddening beneath the white cotton. 10 was enough for the first wave. But she wasn't done yet. The lesson had to sink in deep. We are going to 12, Eliza said. 1 for every month you have been acting like the world revolves around you. No, please, 10 is enough, Emily begged. 11, Eliza said, ignoring the plea. Thwack! This one was harder. A punctuation mark. Ah! Emily cried out, her voice echoing off the hills. 12. Thwack! The final blow landed with authority. Eliza held her hand against the stinging flesh for a moment, pressing down. It was a gesture of containment. It is done. Then, she smoothed the dark blue frock back down over Emily's legs. She rubbed Emily's back in slow, soothing circles. There, Eliza murmured. All over. Emily didn't move. She lay limp on the blanket, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Her backside throbbed with a pulsing, radiant heat that felt like a sunburn. I'm sorry, she whispered into the wool. Not yet, Eliza said, stroking her hair. You're sorry it hurt. You're sorry you got caught. We'll see if you're sorry for the action later. Eliza sat back on her heels. She looked at the ruined picnic. Then she looked at Clara. Well, Eliza said with a sigh, I suppose we should salvage what we can. She stood up and began to pick up the plastic containers. Emily lay there for another minute, listening to the sounds of her mother and aunt cleaning up her mess. The shame of lying there while they worked was sharper than the spanking. Slowly, painfully, Emily pushed herself up. Her face was streaked with tears. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her dress was rumpled. She sat on her heels, wincing as her sore bottom made contact with her legs. She looked at the soggy sandwiches. She looked at the spilled cream. And for the first time, she truly saw it. She saw the waste. She saw the time. She crawled forward. I'll do it, Emily croaked. She grabbed a trash bag from Clara's hand. I'll do it, she repeated, louder this time. Please, let me clean it up. Eliza looked down at her daughter. She saw the sincerity in the red eyes. She saw the humility. Eliza nodded. She handed over the bag. "Clean it up, Emily," she said. "Every crumb." The cleaning up was, in many ways, worse than the spanking. The physical pain of the discipline was sharp, a fire that burned hot and fast, fading now into a dull, pulsing warmth that radiated from Emily's backside. But the cleaning was slow. It was tactile. It was a confrontation with the reality of her negligence. Emily knelt in the grass. The knees of her dark blue cotton frock were damp, soaking up the moisture from the ground. She reached for a cucumber sandwich. It was sodden, the bread disintegrating into a wet, white mush in her fingers. It smelled of lemon juice and dirt. She placed it into the black trash bag Clara held open. Next was the fruit. The strawberries, once ruby red and inviting, were now coated in grit. The melon balls were bruised. Emily scooped them up by the handful, her hands sticky with the sugary residue of the spilled lemonade. "I'm sorry," Emily whispered again, her voice thick. "Keep cleaning," Eliza said from above. She wasn't helping. She was watching. This was part of the penance. If Eliza cleaned it up, she was absolving Emily of the labor. By making Emily do it, she was ensuring the memory stuck. Emily picked up the shattered remains of the clotted cream jar. She was careful with the glass shards, wrapping them in a spoiled linen napkin, one of the ones Eliza had ironed that morning. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. She was literally throwing away her mother's effort. It took 20 minutes to clear the site. By the end, Emily's hands were filthy. Her dress was stained. Her face felt tight from the dried tears. Aunt Clara tied the trash bag with a knot. "There," Clara said gently. "The hill is clean." Eliza looked at the spot. The grass was flattened and wet, but the debris was gone. "Go wash your hands in the stream," Eliza told Emily. "Then we are leaving." Emily walked to the small brook that ran nearby. She plunged her sticky hands into the ice-cold water. The shock of the cold against her skin was grounding. She splashed water on her face, scrubbing away the salt of her tears. When she returned, Eliza and Clara had folded the tartan blanket. "Are we going home?" Emily asked, staring at her feet. "No," Clara said, stepping in before Eliza could speak. "We are not letting the day end on a failure. We are going to the Willow and Whistle." Eliza looked at her sister. "Clara, I don't know." "Eliza," Clara said firmly. "She has been corrected. The mess is cleaned. Now we reset. We need tea. And I need a scone that isn't covered in ants." Eliza sighed, looking at Emily's miserable posture. The anger had drained away, leaving only exhaustion. "Fine," Eliza said. "To the cafe." Scene transition. The Willow and Whistle was a quintessential Cotswold tea room. Low oak beams, walls lined with horse brasses, and the scent of baking flour and vanilla in the air. It was busy. Emily walked in behind her mother and aunt, feeling self-conscious. Her dress was rumpled, her eyes were puffy, and underneath the blue cotton skirt, her bottom was tender, reminding her of the punishment with every step she took. They found a small round table in the corner. Emily sat down gingerly. As her backside met the hard wooden chair, she winced, a sharp intake of breath hissing through her teeth. She shifted her weight to her thighs, trying to find a position that didn't press on the welts. Eliza noticed. She didn't say anything, but her eyes softened slightly. It was a necessary discomfort, a physical memory. They ordered a pot of Earl Grey and a Victoria sponge to share. For the first few minutes, the silence was heavy. Emily stirred her tea, watching the milk swirl into the amber liquid. "Mom," Emily said finally, keeping her voice low so the other patrons wouldn't hear. "I really am sorry. Not just about the food. But I know you wanted today to be perfect for Aunt Clara. And I made it about me." Eliza took a sip of her tea. She set the cup down with a clink. "It is not about perfection, Emily," Eliza said. "It is about the invisible labor." "The what?" "The invisible labor," Eliza repeated. "Do you know what time I got up?" "Early." 5 a.m., Eliza said. "I sourced the ingredients. I planned the menu. I packed the car. I ironed the napkins. I did all of that so that we could have a moment of ease. When you dance through that, when you knock it over because you can't be bothered to look behind you, you are saying that my labor is invisible to you, that it has no value. Emily felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't thought of it like that. She had just seen a picnic. She hadn't seen the hours of love that constructed it. "I see it now," Emily whispered. "I do." Clara reached over and patted Emily's hand. "We all learn the hard way sometimes, love. I remember when I was your age, I borrowed your grandmother's pearl necklace without asking and broke the clasp. I didn't sit comfortably for a week." Emily looked up, surprised. "Grandma spanked you?" "With a hairbrush," Clara nodded, taking a bite of cake. "And I never touched her jewelry without asking again. It grounded me. I was floating away on my own ego, and she pulled me back down." "That's what happened today," Eliza said. "You were floating, Emily. I had to pull you down." Emily nodded. She shifted in her chair again, the sting flaring up. "I feel pulled down," she admitted. "It hurts." "It will heal," Eliza said. "The question is, will the memory remain?" "Yes," Emily said immediately. "I promise." They finished their tea. The atmosphere was lighter now. The storm had broken. The punishment had been administered, the lesson explained, and now the family was knitting itself back together. The drive home was quiet. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows across the hedgerows. When they pulled into the graveled driveway of their cottage, it was 6 p.m. "I'll order a takeaway," Eliza said wearily as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "I don't have the energy to cook after everything." "No," Emily said. She opened her car door and stepped out. She looked at her mother. "No takeaway," Emily said firmly. "I'm making dinner." Eliza looked at her. You don't cook." "I can read," Emily said. "And I can follow instructions. Sit in the living room with Aunt Clara. Drink wine. I've got this." Eliza hesitated. She looked at Emily's determined face. She saw the need for redemption. "Okay," Eliza said slowly. "There is ground lamb in the fridge. Potatoes in the pantry. Shepherd's pie," Emily said. "I know." Emily marched into the kitchen. She washed her hands, thoroughly this time. She tied an apron over her grass-stained blue dress. She found the recipe card box. It was old, wooden, filled with Eliza's handwriting. She flipped through it until she found classic shepherd's pie. It looked complicated. Sauté onions until translucent. Brown the meat. Simmer with stock and Worcestershire sauce. Boil potatoes. Mash with butter and milk. Bake until golden. Emily took a deep breath. She began. For the next 90 minutes, Emily Carter worked harder than she had worked in months. She chopped onions, her eyes watering, but she didn't stop. She peeled potatoes until her hands cramped. She browned the meat, careful not to burn it, adjusting the heat just as the card said. She realized, as she stood over the hot stove, how exhausting this was. Mom does this every night, Emily thought. After work. She stands here and chops and stirs and sweats, and I just come in and eat it and put my plate in the sink. The realization hit her harder than the paddle had. The invisible labor. It wasn't just the picnic. It was her whole life. She mashed the potatoes. She added the butter, plenty of it, just like Eliza did. She tasted it. It needed salt. She added salt. She assembled the pie in the ceramic baking dish. She used a fork to create the little ridges on top of the mash, exactly how her mother always did it, so they would get crispy in the oven. She put it in the oven and set the timer. Then, while it baked, she cleaned. She didn't just wipe the counters. She scrubbed them. She washed the pots and pans. She dried them and put them away. She swept the floor where she had dropped some onion skins. By the time the timer dinged, the kitchen was spotless, and the house smelled of savory meat and roasting potatoes. Emily put on the oven mitts. She pulled the dish out. It was bubbling. It was golden brown. It looked perfect. She carried it to the dining room. She had set the table already, the good china, the crystal glasses, candles lit. "Dinner is served," Emily announced. Eliza and Clara walked in from the living room. They stopped. They looked at the table. They looked at the pie. They looked at Emily, who was sweating slightly, her hair messy, standing proudly in her apron. "My goodness," Clara said. "It smells divine." Eliza walked to the table. She looked at the ridges on the potatoes. She looked at Emily. "You made the ridges," Eliza said softly. "For the crispiness," Emily said. "Like you do." They sat down. Emily served them. Eliza took the first bite. Emily held her breath. Eliza chewed slowly. She closed her eyes. "It is delicious," Eliza said. "Perfectly seasoned." Emily let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She sat down, wincing again as she hit the chair, but this time she didn't mind the pain as much. It felt like a balance. They ate in a comfortable silence, the kind that only exists when people are truly at ease with each other. As they finished, Eliza reached across the table. She took Emily's hand. She squeezed it. "You did well today, Emily," Eliza said. "And I don't mean the cooking. I mean the recovery." Emily looked down at their joined hands. Her mother's hand was rougher, stronger. Her own was smoother, uncalloused. "Only because you made me see," Emily murmured. "If you hadn't stopped me, if you hadn't put me over your knee, I probably would have just bought sandwiches and laughed it off. I wouldn't have understood. Sometimes," Aunt Clara said, pouring more wine, "we need a sharp shock to wake us up." "I'm awake," Emily said. "I'm definitely awake." Later that night, twilight had settled over the Cotswolds, turning the green hills into silhouettes of deep purple and indigo. Emily stood at her bedroom window. She had finally taken off the dark blue cotton frock. It lay on her bed, grass-stained and wrinkled. She was wearing her pajamas now, soft flannel that was gentle on her tender skin. She looked out at the landscape. The oak tree where the picnic had happened was just a dark shape on the horizon. She felt different. Yesterday, she was a girl who thought the world was a backdrop for her content. Today, she was a young woman who understood the cost of things. She touched her backside gingerly. It was still hot. It would be bruised tomorrow. The marks would last for a few days, a fading reminder of the Sunday she ruined and then fixed. She didn't feel resentment. She felt grounded. She felt like she belonged to the earth again, not just the cloud. The door opened softly behind her. Eliza stood there. She was holding a tube of arnica cream. "For the bruises," Eliza said quietly. She walked over and placed the tube on the nightstand. "Thank you," Emily said. Eliza stood next to her daughter, looking out the window. "I love you, Emily," Eliza said. "I disciplined you because I refuse to let you be a person who doesn't care. The world has enough of those." "I know, Mom," Emily said. She leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "I love you too." Eliza kissed the top of her head. "Go to sleep. We have a lot of dishes to do in the morning." Emily laughed. "I'll do them." "I know you will," Eliza smiled. Eliza left the room, closing the door with a soft click. Emily turned off the lamp. She climbed into bed, lying on her stomach, pulling the duvet up to her chin. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, her mind was quiet. No music, no notifications, just the sound of the wind outside and the steady, rhythmic beating of her own heart.